They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Coming up on Life with Brian.
And it grew into what it's become since then. It started with a portable plastic greenhouse and some insults on social media. Somebody must have told Peter Beardsley that he's a big hit on Athletico Mince. Whether he knows what it is or has listened to it, I don't know.
So that's it. I'm off to Manchester. Manchester? What are you going to Manchester for? It's just because you can't get a decent fucking haircut in Blackburn.
Oh, hey, we're back for our first episode of 2025. How are you doing? Mark here with Matthew and, of course, Brian McClare. Are you both okay?
I'm very good. Thank you very much, Mark. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. I woke this morning a little bit perturbed by the fact I read a story about Michael Owen and he rated the 8 films that he's ever seen. And I don't know whether to feel validated or not, but his favourite film, the one film that he can tolerate, is Karate Kid, which happens to be my favourite film. So I don't know how to feel about what, myself and Michael Owen having something in common like that.
And hasn't he watched all those films on a plane? That was also the
something like that,
to that story. Yeah.
He gave Rocky 3 out of 10, which I thought was a bit harsh. Anyway, I've got 2 questions for you, Brian, before we start. Number 1, what was your best Christmas present this year? And number 2, did you enjoy the hectic holiday fixture schedule when you were a player or not?
Oh, well, I'll answer number 2 first. I did not enjoy the hectic fixture schedule. That's why I loathe Christmas.
Fair enough.
Because we were always, my memory of Christmas is waking the children up, forcing the children out of bed in the morning before I went to training and making them open some of their presents, so that I could be there videoing away. And then we would go to training. And then sometimes, I remember one occasion we travelled on Christmas Day down to London because we played Chelsea on Boxing Day, so I wasn't a fan. And then you had those back-to-back fixtures at New Year, playing in the 31st and the 1st. So I don't know what they're complaining about now with a fixture problem or being tired or whatever. Christmas present this year, I can't think of anything in particular. So there's nothing outstanding, I must admit. I think that the nicest thing is getting the opportunity to buy yourself something. So my mother bought me an Amazon voucher. So
you didn't get any of that dodgy aftershave that we were talking about off air then?
No, there's been a long time since anybody's purchased anything, oh dear, whatever it is for me at Christmas or indeed. No, in fact, Matthew was the last person that bought me something, yeah.
Denim.
That was last year.
Denim,
Denim.
Yeah. It wasn't even knockoff. It was the genuine answer.
Yeah, that's right. I still use that. I'm not used up all right. So yeah, denim from co-host Matthew, who's gleaned that piece of information from somewhere.
Yeah,
classic. As usual, we've got a guest with us, and the first person with us this year, he's a podcaster and co-host of the brilliant Athletico Mince with Bob Mortimer and Top Flight Time Machine with Sam Delaney. It's a big welcome to Andy Dawson. How are you, Andy?
I'm very well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me along. It's first episode of 2025, very privileged.
Pleasure to have you here.
Not at all. Brian, you've been doing a little bit of research on Andy, haven't you? So we'll let you crack on.
The research is always my favourite part of the programme, apart from doing the programme itself. Big Sunderland fan, Andy, aren't you?
Big Sunderland fan.
So,
yeah.
Earliest game and earliest match you can recall going to, who did you go with? Who did they play? What was it like?
First one, I can tell you the date of it. It was 7th of March 1981, and it was against Aston Villa in what was the first division then. It was the season when Aston Villa went on to win the league. So they were about 2 or 3 months away from winning the league. And first game, and we were a goal down after 2 minutes. And that kind of set the tone, I think, for the rest of my Sunderland supporting career. Other than a few brief highlights over the 43 years since then, 44 years almost. There's been a lot of downs, not so many ups. But I'd still really remember it really vividly, that thing where you go up onto the terraces and you see a proper football pitch for the first time in person, and the grass is greener than any grass you've ever seen in your life before. Which was something, considering it was 1981, because the state of the pitches then weren't great.
I was going to say, it must have been the first game of the season.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, it was March. So it was the beginning of spring, so the pitches weren't that bad. It wasn't the depths of winter. But yeah, just the whole experience just knocks you for six. The incessant swearing from everybody else that's there. The stench of fags and booze, casual racism being bandied about. It was just a completely different world that I'd never been in before, and I was just hooked. I mean, I'd supported Sunderland ever since whenever there's a photograph of me, age 3, in an oversized Sunderland strip, which I got for my birthday. So it was kind of, you were indoctrinated into it, really, because Sunderland's it's a one club city. So it's not like Manchester where you get to choose City or United or Liverpool, Everton, or even Glasgow. It's Sunderland. There's no two ways about it. So yeah, that was the first one, and we lost that game 2-1. And just tried to get to as many games as I could. My dad took us along to that one and sat me on the crush barrier. We were in the Roker end, so it was all standing, so there was crush barriers. Sat me on that so I could see, and never looked back. Still season ticket to this day.
And was your dad participating in the language?
Well, he wasn't. No, we were. I'll say a polite family compared to some of the people that you get on the terraces at the Roker end back then. So it came as a bit of a shock. Like I say, the incessant, non-stop swearing that you would hear. Nothing like I got at home. You get the occasional bloody or bugger at home, but that was as far as it went.
And did you have the full match experience? Did you get the pie? Did you get the bovril? Did you get the wagon wheel? Did you get sweets on the way or sweets on the way back? Can you remember anything like
that? There was a hot dog.
A
hot dog was acquired from a hot dog van outside the ground. I say stadium. Brook Park wasn't a stadium; it was a ground.
Yeah. That's quite a good point you make there about there were grounds then, they're now stadia.
Yeah, they were.
Stadia. Yeah.
The interesting,
I don't know when.
The interesting thing here is that, Brian, you're asking Andy these questions from a fan's point of view, but you could sort of flip it on its head and say, I mean, I remember you playing at Roker Park at least once. Is it a place you could say, oh yeah, I remember this, I remember that?
Well, Roker Park I do remember, because it was right at that moment at the beginning of the game. My favourite experiences would go to away grounds, because nearly everyone was obviously against you because the home sport was the biggest. Sunderland fans have always been very vociferous. And Roker Park certainly lent itself to that cacophony of noise. And then the away fans, United away fans, would always be the most noisy as well. So you were always in for a great atmosphere. And like most grounds that Man United went to, it was a huge game for that particular team. We lost 2-1 there. Gabbiadini was in his pomp. I don't know if he was one of your favourite players or not, Andy, but he caused us a few problems and a number of things. We used to think this about Gabbiadini, that he had a turbo and it would burn out at some point, which would be about 25-30 minutes into the game, because he was so fast, but it would just it would blow up, and then he would be no influence on the game. But unfortunately that day, I think he scored 2 goals early on, so they went on. I think no, he didn't. He scored 1. I think Bennett scored the winning goal.
Yeah, Bennett scored right at the end, I seem to remember. It was a game that when we went to see the Happy Mondays a few months ago, don't you remember? Somebody came up to you in the crowd.
That's right, yeah.
And reminded you of that.
A Sunderland fan, wasn't he?
There was one Sunderland fan in the venue in Liverpool, and Brian was stood next to him, and he loved the opportunity to remind Brian of that. That game in September 1990, I think it was. And Gary Bennett.
1990, yeah, because we saw Gabbiadini, I think, later that season at Crystal Palace. He'd been with us since third division. And it's one of the very few players that Sunderland have ever had that we've actually sold on for a profit. You could probably count them on one hand over the decades. But Gabbiadini was a great player for us. I don't think it was ever the same again when he moved on. But I don't think he was really quite a top level kind of player. I think sort of second division would have been his best level. But it's a great player for us though.
Of course, he runs a hotel in York now, doesn't he? So next time we have a Life with Brian Christmas jolly in York, we'll have to try and find out which one is his hotel and stay there.
How do you know that?
Oh, it's quite a well-known fact.
In York.
In York, yes. Yeah.
And have you got a favourite match, Andy?
It's a good question. I think probably we beat Chelsea 4-1 at home at the Stadium of Light. And we were 4-0 up at half time. And it was 2000 might be 2000 actually. One of those two seasons that we had when Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips were just on fire for us in the Premier League. And we were 4-0 up at half time. And it was just dreamland stuff because Chelsea were a big deal then. And just to be 4-0 up, everything just went right. Second half was an understatement, and they pulled a goal back, I think. Probably that. Just for that 45 minutes, it was just dreamland stuff. Yeah.
Did you play a bit of football when you were younger?
Yeah, I used to play kind of school team level in the juniors, but I was too small and too skinny to have ever kind of got to any kind of decent level.
But you would
too shit as well, to be honest.
That doesn't help.
Well, you would have went down the park or played in the streets and all that.
Oh God, yeah, constantly in the school playground as well. As tennis ball came out every playtime at school, and we just play. There was a scrap of land just up the hill from where I lived, and we used to play on that. And a set of goalposts in it, and it just constantly playing football, obsessed with it.
Did you imagine you were a player when you were doing that, or did you imagine you were a different players when you were doing that?
There's one thing I used to remember doing, which was like on the driveway at home, we had like a garage at the bottom of the driveway, and I used to use the garage doors, the double doors, as like a goal kind of thing. And I remember trying to recreate. Do you remember Justin Fashionu's goal that he scored for Norwich?
Yeah.
Where he flicked it up and turned and volleyed it. I remember spending ages trying to recreate that goal.
I bet you were popular with the neighbours, weren't you? With the ball crashing into a garage door.
Yeah, probably. Thing is, the next door neighbour was obsessed with football as well, and he was the fella that came with us to that very first match. A guy called Doug who lived next door. So he probably turned a blind eye to it really. But yeah, just trying to recreate that goal and probably getting it right once out of every 100 attempts or something like that. But I don't know who I would have pretended to be. Hero for Sunderland would have been Gary Rowell at the time.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you remember Gary Rowell or not.
Yeah.
He was ostensibly a midfielder, but he was always in among the goals for us. He was proper cult hero at Sunderland. I remember he once came to the village where I lived to do the opening ceremony of a new greengrocers that was opening. And I was going to go along because there was, the meet and greet kind of thing, get an autograph, all that sort of thing. And I was just too petrified. I was too petrified to meet Gary Rowell, my hero. So I bottled it and I didn't go. I still think about that now.
What an opportunity missed.
Yeah.
You could have had your own podcast with him, like me and Brian.
Could have done. Yeah, you never know. A lifelong friendship could have been formed. Yeah.
Andy, you wrote a book called Get in the Sea, which was a rant about things and stuff that you wanted done away with. And now I'd like you, first of all, and then Brian, to tell us 3 football-related things that you want shot of, but you can't say VAR.
Oh, that was the first thing I was going to say. I was ready for that.
We can't have VR on this program, otherwise Brian would just be off on one. So,
I might not. I just you're learning stuff about it all the time, aren't you? It's just, I thought it was really good that there was no VAR in the FA Cup third round. So, and then it was interesting to listen to comments. So
yeah, so many people are saying that. I mean, Sunderland's in the Championship, so we haven't got VAR, and if we do get promoted, I almost don't want to because it's probably going to be a relegation battle and we're going to have VAR. I don't know whether at some point some club is going to win the championship and just say no thanks, we'll just stay here. We won't go into the Premier League. We'll just stay here and we'll just try and dominate.
As an option, isn't it? Because that would be brilliant. That
it is quite refreshing to hear Ange Postecoglou speaking out against it as a manager. I know he's moaned about it as a pundit, but for an active Premier League manager to be so against it, I think is quite refreshing. So maybe a few others might join his bandwagon. But I'll
say the first thing I'll get rid of will be the Premier League.
Good answer.
To be honest, which incorporates VAR into it, I guess. I've completely lost interest in the Premier League in the last 2-3 seasons. I hardly ever watch Match of the Day now, and if I do, I'll watch it later on, and I'll just fast forward through all of the guff that comes afterwards. You know, the interviews with managers and players, and all the analysis afterwards. I'll just watch the action. The Premier League has just become this ridiculous, bloated monstrosity now, I think. When you've got one of the clubs owned by a misogynist, homophobic death cult, and you've got another club that faces 130 charges against it that's dominated the league in the last few years, you just wonder what it's all about, what it's all for. And it's come a long way since 1981, for example, when I first went to watch Sunderland against Aston Villa. And yeah, I still love watching Sunderland, but the Premier League kind of doesn't hold any interest. I kind of feel like at the top level of the Premier League, the teams and the coaches have worked out how to do football, and it's almost like you're watching a little procession of here's how we do football. Here's how we score goals. This is it, and there's very little off the cuff stuff. There's very little stuff that's I get off the cuff's probably the right word for it. But there's you kind of know what you're going to get, and the championship doesn't have that. The championship, I think, is the best league in the world because you can be 18th at Christmas and you can end up getting promoted. It's an absolutely chaotic league.
Do you find yourself compromised then? If with Sunderland, if they are going to go up with make a fist of it, go through the playoffs or what have you, would you be quite disappointed to see Sunderland go into the top tier then?
A little bit, because last time we were up there, we were in there for 10 seasons, and most of them were relegation battles. And that's kind of not really what I want to go along and watch season after season. So it would be a relegation battle again, because I don't think we've got a lot of money to spend. And you need to spend massive money, I think, to get a foothold. Or you've got to spend it really cleverly. And that's not easy to do. So, yeah, you'd be kind of looking at a relegation battle. Even now, the Championship, though, the teams that come down tend to be the teams that are then fighting for promotion again because they've got that parachute payments. And there's so little money everywhere else in football now. It's kind of like a yo-yo situation that seems to be emerging. Premier League, put that on the sea.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, you've given Brian a good few minutes there to think of his. I can think of one that you might mention, but I'll let you.
Well, if you're talking about that, it's football completely, and particularly in England, maybe even the UK, not European-wise even, I would look at the other end of it from the child upwards, and you wouldn't be allowed to sign any player to your football club until you were 14. The reason for that is that there's so many kids and the families that are being... their lives have been interrupted hugely because of the academy systems, and it's based on a number crunching up, where you have to play games programs. So I would go back to the old system where you have to play whatever football you can get, school football, club football, and I think that when you get to that age, Mark's been has had the experience of that, you can make a better judgment. When you're running around looking at kids at 6 and 7 and 8, you can look at their parents, if it is their parents, and guess roughly what height or physique they're going to be. But by 14, you've got a better chance of making a better judgment on that, and therefore you sign fewer players, and fewer players would be have situations where it causes great unhappiness. I don't think I don't think it works very well. That I don't think that's taken into consideration enough. There's a lot of stuff about, very much so about mental health and all sorts of different sport. And football is very culpable in creating premature professionalism at 7 years of age, and giving parents this dream that their kid's going to be a multimillionaire. That's not right. They're stealing their childhood.
Yeah, couldn't disagree with that.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree.
Have you got any others, any of you? Or are we,
Well, Andy's got to give us number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got another 2, don't you? I would, all football players' social media, I'd put that in the C. I don't think there's any reason for anybody famous, there's no reason for them to be on social media, because it just attracts negativity and hatred and animosity, but particularly footballers. The amount of bile that you see on social media, maybe I just shouldn't be on social media. Maybe that's the trouble. Maybe I should get off it. But the amount of shit that you see on there around footballers, given the anonymity of it and the amount of, for example, racism that players encounter, and they just shouldn't be on there. They don't need to be on there. There's other things they can be doing with their spare time other than posting pictures of themselves. The clubs can have an outlet for that kind of thing, but I think players having their own personal social media ends in tears, and I don't see what the purpose of it is. So yeah, just stick that in the C as well.
Okay, that's dropped in there. Brian, what are you throwing in the ocean?
Well, I would get rid of several personnel surrounding players. They would include analysts, data analysts, football scientists, and set-piece coaches. What the fuck is that all about? Set-piece coach. Surely, I mean, we used to devise our own, and other players and other teams used to devise their own. Would you not think that people who have played football for a long, long time would be able to come up with set pieces of their own, or maybe indeed set pieces that already occurred in football in the past, maybe at school, maybe up in the playground? People that I just don't get. There's more people on the football pitch now before the game starts who are not players or not got strips on, and it said 3 buses to go to games. Absolutely ridiculous,
I hope there's no football analysts or set-piece coaches.
Well, I hope there are, because I don't give it. Because that's right. I mean, they're stealing a living in it. I mean, that's what they're doing, I mean, right, so we go on. We've got as a sub, right? Maybe it's due to being the way. So Ali Ferguson would give you information, and he would tell you who you were marking and where you're supposed to be, and if you didn't do it, you would get your ass kicked, maybe taken off, or you would get substituted, or maybe in extreme cases they would sell you if you didn't listen to it. So it was our job to point out to other players on the pitch where the position was supposed to be. Now players can't get onto the pitch now without looking at an iPad or a big folder full of things where you're supposed to be. It's like an American football playbook, which is a totally different game. It's always
big green rectangle.
Whatever, like you're supposed to be there. How fucking thick are you if you can't just sit listening to 15 minutes of it, or look at a bit of paper on the wall? Right, that's what I'm supposed to be if I get on. And another thing that if players, this is another thing that annoys me really, if players are not ready to go on, as soon as the manager turns around and tells him to go on, if he's not comes over, just takes his top off and ready to go on, he should get booked. Anybody that's got to put their shin pads on, put tape on, put their boots on, whatever, they should just get booked or told, I'm sorry, you've taken too much time, you cannot go on that pitch now.
This is a man who spent, 14 years as a coach at United, Brian? I'd love to know.
I never do any of those. They weren't allowed there. I wouldn't. I've plenty of times I've said when they're not ready, I just forget it, just sit down.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you've got 2 and 3 in there.
Yeah. Right, we'll hand the last one over to Andy. What's your last one?
Yeah, third one kind of ties in with all of that stuff about statistics and analysis and all that, and it's playing out from the back. This playing out from the back bullshit that seems to have infected football, and I'm sure it's based on analysis that a percentage of moves playing out from the back will lead to a certain amount of percentage of possession in the final third, yada, yada, yada. But when you see a team trying to play it from the back, get it horribly wrong and concede a goal. I just find it laughable because it just seems completely alien to what football should be about. The trouble is that there's a handful of teams that have got players that are skillful enough to be able to play it from the back and to do it properly, but it seems to have been riddled through the rest of the game, right down the pyramid, where lower league teams seem to think that playing out from the back is where it's at, even though their players are completely unable to pull it off. And I just look at it; it just looks wrong. As someone who's watched football for like 50 years, it just looks ludicrous to see goalkeepers trying to take on rushing forwards and then play a pass along their goal line to the right back or whatever, and then they start playing it from there. It looks alien from everything that we were taught when we were kids. Don't dick about in your own penalty box. And it now seems to be de rigueur. It's what you have to do. So hide that in the sea as well.
Are you saying all the teams that you've watched Sunderland play, do they play the same way as well in the Championship?
Not all of them. But you do see a lot more of it now than you used to. And you even see it when you watch the EFL highlights on a Saturday night. You see teams in League Two doing it.
Yeah, I've been to League One and League Two games over the last couple of years. I just think it's a piece of nonsense. But let me ask you a question that relates back to your favourite times at Sunderland. How successful would the team be if they had a centre forward like Niall Quinn and a goal scorer like Phillips and got the ball forward quickly and get everybody else forward? Yeah. Forget that playing about from the back. How would the defenders cope with all of that, getting the ball
completely forward? Because perhaps that will come back because everything's cyclical, isn't it? And things going in. I
don't know why they're not doing it
in a fashion.
You know, so okay, if you get whatever way you play it and whatever idea, right, fine. But Southampton have averaged 57 passes per shot, right? That means they've taken more than 57 passes all round the pitch before they've had a shot. They've got the fewest number of goals in the Premier League, right? Mm-hmm. Mark's team, Everton, a number of occasions recently, they've had no shots on target, none whatsoever. What's that all about, Get the ball forward.
We struggle to register 57 passes in a game, let alone fucking 57 passes before a shot.
Why is it? It's this idea that it's you get excommunicated as a coach or a manager if you don't play out from the back, and the teams that are trying to do it will struggle the higher up the pitch, higher up the leagues that they go, because and it's never changing football. It's not always the same, but the worst players on the football pitch, technically, are centre halves, and they get more touches of the ball now than anybody else, and the goalkeeper. And that's where the problem comes. You like you just said there, Andy, you're what, as a football fan, you're watching the goalie pass it out to a centre back, and the next minute it's a throw in for the opposition 2 yards from or it's a corner. What are you doing?
Yeah, totally. But the big man, little man thing might well come back. But I don't think big centre forwards are being, for want of a better word, bred at youth level anymore. I don't think it's regarded as where these big lads going to come from. These big centre forwards that can win the headers and where's Duncan Ferguson? Where's the new Duncan Ferguson? Where's the new Niall Quinn? Niall Quinn and Kevin Phillips. They've talked about it before. Peter Reid just used to say to them, "Quinny, you win the headers. Kev, you make sure you're within 10 yards of Quinny at all times."
Yeah.
He'll win it. He'll nod it down to you. You put it in the back of the net. And it was as simple as that. And, nobody's doing that anymore. But it might come back in. You never know.
You're listening to Life with Brian.
I was described by somebody in 84, 85 as the thinking woman's crumpet.
And then one day he rings me up and he says, "Can I let you into a secret?" And I said, "Yeah, I thought he was going to tell us he was like a Tory or something like that." It's like, this is just a character that I do.
Kenny, what's he like as a person, Mr. Ferguson? He doesn't have that huge, well, I perceive that huge collection of sort of friends and associates that you do. And Ferguson went, "You only need 4 people to carry your coffin. Put the phone down."
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We're going to take a little sidestep away from our football ranting and moaning for well, 5 minutes at least. I just wanted to talk about your podcast, Athletico Mince, that you do with Bob Mortimer. How did you two first connect, and what was the original brief?
We first became friends on Twitter. He'd appeared on Twitter, so I followed him because obviously it was Bob Mortimer. I mean, I've been a big fan of Vic and Bob right back at the beginning of the Channel 4 series they did, which I think must have been 1990. Loved everything they'd done, been to see them live countless times. So when Bob appeared on Twitter, I followed him. A few weeks later, he followed me back. I thought, oh, must be doing something entertaining on Twitter to be followed by Bob Mortimer. Great. And there was one day when I'd been out to Aldi and I'd bought a portable plastic greenhouse, which had been reduced to 25 quid in the middle aisle in Aldi, where all the good stuff is.
Next to the canoes.
And I'd posted, I tweeted about this fantastic bargain that I'd got, this plastic greenhouse I was so happy with. And then all of a sudden there's a reply to the tweet from Bob Mortimer who said along the lines of, what a piece of shit that is. You're a fucking idiot. That's going to blow down the first time there's any kind of gust of wind. Why did you buy that? So I was a bit shocked by this, but amused. And I just thought the only way I can deal with this is just to insult him back. So I just give him some grief back, told him he was a prick and that kind of thing. And then for a while, we just used to trade insults with each other on Twitter. This was probably about 2012, I think. So that was lots of fun. And then he got in touch and he just said, him and Jim were recording the House of Fools sitcom that they did in 2013. And did I want to go down and watch one of the recordings of it and maybe go for a pint afterwards? Yeah, I thought, I'll have some of that. So I went down to London, watched the recording, and we went and had a few pints afterwards. Got on really well. And I think, I'm not totally sure, but I think the idea of a podcast was kind of mooted that night. Because I'd done lots of like freelance comedy writing in the past, and I think I'd kind of said I'd love to do a podcast about football, and he was up for it, I think. And then we worked on a couple of TV ideas. The Get in the Sea thing that I did, we did a pilot for that for Channel 4, which didn't get anywhere. So we kind of collaborated on a couple of TV ideas, and then Bob had his triple heart bypass operation in late 2015. And once he was recovering from that, I said, this idea of the podcast that we've had in the past, do you fancy doing that? Just as a nice, easy thing to kind of get back into doing a bit of work. And he was up for it. So we started doing Athletico Mince in March 2016. And it was originally just going to be a football podcast. We were just going to talk about football each week because we both love football. But it then kind of, within about 3 weeks, we realised that our opinions about football were mainly shit. And nobody really wanted to hear them. So it then kind of went off into a different direction. And we started introducing characters into it. And Steve McLaren, I think, was the first one. We were wondering where Steve McLaren might be each week. And then he was given a yellow snake called Casper as his sidekick. And it just kind of, I think the word organically is the word they use. It just kind of grew into what it's become since then. So, yeah, it started with a portable plastic greenhouse and some insults on social media.
And that must have been in the early days of podcasting. I was trying to remember the other day that, podcasting now is, everyone's got one, haven't they, if we're honest. But it wasn't such a big deal. 2016 must have been quite the sort of beginning of this phenomenon of podcasting, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was. There wasn't that many around. I think the biggest podcast around had probably been the one Ricky Gervais had done. I was looking at I had a screen grab of the top 5 Apple podcast chart from just after we'd started, and it was stuff like There Was No Such Thing as a Fish, which has been going forever. That was in there. And I think My Dad Wrote a Porno was a big one back at the time. And the other one was something like Radio 4 Comedy of the Week. So there wasn't really very many comedy podcasts, and there certainly wasn't the massive influx of podcasts that there is now. Everyone's got a podcast now. It's kind of like the days of when everybody had a blog, or when everybody had to be on Twitter and everybody had to have a Twitter account. Everyone does a podcast now. And I don't know where all the listeners are for them, but everyone's having a go.
True.
You mentioned about all the characters and stuff that you do there, Andy. Have any of the footballers or the managers that you parody ever been in touch to say whether they like how you send them up or not?
We've never had anybody directly be in touch. We got an inkling once that Harry Kane was aware of his portrayal on the podcast, because there was almost a thing where we were going to do a sponsorship advert thing. I think it was might have been ahead of the 2020 Euros, which were in 21 in the end. So, I'm pretty sure that they'll have been made aware of them by people who listen to it. I know Adrian Lewis, the darts player, is aware of his presence in the Slaughters meat restaurant, because he got asked about it in an interview that's on YouTube, and he just said something like, I don't know what this meat festival thing is everyone's always on about. I don't understand it. So yeah, I'm sure that I don't know how often it gets listened to in the football fraternity. I know that loads of musicians and groups listen to the podcasts kind of like when they're on tour, on the tour bus and stuff like that. We get loads of feedback from the young musicians. But as for footballers, I reckon they'll know, or they'll have been made aware. Somebody must have told Peter Beardsley that he's a big hit on Athletico Mince. Whether he knows what it is or has listened to it, I don't know. But it's probably best not knowing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen Beardsley a couple of times at the baggage reclaim at Newcastle Airport in his puffer jacket, and tried to take a side photograph, for his mates. But yeah, I'm sure he's pretty aware.
Yeah, well, next time you see him, ask him. But have you got a favourite character in the show?
Out of the ones that I do, my favourite of all of them is Peter Beardsley, because it's just genius, and Bob just does these like 10-minute monologues of Peter Beardsley being kind of browbeaten by his wife and just being the eternal kind of suffering husband. Out of the ones I do, I think Roy Hodgson. I love doing Roy Hodgson and his obsession with Warhammer. But that's kind of it. It's got the podcast got people from the world of football in, but they're not doing football stuff. Roy Hodgson's obsessed with Warhammer. Steve McLaren's got his Snake Casper, is his double act. Peter Beardsley, I say, it's just under the thumb constantly. We've got Geordie Heat, which has got Eddie Howe as a detective in it. Previously we had Steve Bruce, but I think Mr. Sting in Geordie Heat's possibly one of my favourites as well. But I'm just dead lucky, because like there's times when I'm recording it and I'm just sat there as a fan, and I just think I'm just dead lucky to be the first one to get to hear all this brilliant stuff that Bob does, because I think the stuff he's done on Mince is up there with everything else that he's done comedy wise in his career. And I think that's kind of because we've got a complete freedom. Nobody commissioned Athletico Mince. Nobody can say there's not going to be any more unless one of us decide we're not going to do any more. And nobody tells us what we've got to do. There's that complete creative freedom. And that's like, when you're doing creative stuff, that's an absolute joy, because you haven't got anybody who doesn't know what they're talking about interfering. So yeah, I think that the stuff he's done on Mince, it's right up there with the stuff that he's done with as part of Reason Mortimer. And I just get to be the first one to hear it, and I just sat there kind of open-mouthed as a fan, just enjoying it sometimes.
Brian, if Andy and Bob were going to take the piss out the Man United dressing room in the 90s,
like I used to do, you mean?
Well, yeah, exactly. But who would be the best people for them to caricature?
Well, they just mentioned
what are the characteristics they should particularly target of those people?
Well, you've got Steve Bruce was one that's brilliant, because he had loads of malapropisms, and he even you try to explain, he would say things like, the door's bolted after the horse is gone, and you'd be like, what? Well, it's something like that, isn't it? He goes, yeah, it's something like that, and he'd be, no, don't tell me, and he'd be trying to work it out in his head, and he'd come out with a bit, and he'd go, you're taking the piss. And it got, they were so they were so often come out with these things. You'd think they was doing it deliberately, but he wasn't. And one day, it was a very quite small dressing room we used to have, Andy and the Cliff. You know, we could chat across to each other and chat down. It's not much of. There was only maybe about 18 of us in it, sitting quite close into it. And I remember Mal Donachie, who was quite quiet lad, he used to sit facing me, and he leaned forward one day and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I says, "Yeah, of course you can." He says, "Brucey, yeah, what about him?" He says, "He's taking the piss, isn't he?" I says, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "Well, all the things that he says, he's just making all them up, isn't he? He's just winding people up and taking the piss." I says, No, he's not. "Why are you saying that?" He goes, "Because nobody could be that thick." And I was like that. Well, I think you might be wrong. And he wasn't making it up.
You're fine.
I think he wasn't making it up. He was hilarious. Yeah. So.
Oh, poor old Brucey, eh? Well, there's more material for you there, Andy, if nothing else.
Yeah,
Just laughing, just saying about Roy Hodgson. Man, I went to, there was a short spell at Blackburn after Roy Hodgson had been the manager. And wherever you go, at any football club, there was always people really keen to tell you stories about all sorts of things, previous players, and about Roy Hodgson. And Roy Hodgson was used to smoke cigars all the time. He'd come in after training, sit in his office and smoke cigars all the time. And he'd be in there for ages. Don't know if he was watching analysis or whatever else, was doing or reading stuff or whatever. And he'd come out of his office and he'd declare to the coaches that were in the office, he says, "Right, that's it, I'm off to Manchester." And the coaches are going, "Well, Manchester? What are you going to Manchester for?" He says, "Because you can't get a decent fucking haircut in Blackburn."
Oh yeah, yours are well-styled hair, Roy.
Andy, any more plans to take Mince out on tour again?
Nothing planned at the minute. Would love to do some more. It's been a few years since we've done some live stuff, but Mr. Mortimer tends to have a really, really full schedule with his fishing series, and he's now a highly acclaimed novelist, so that takes a lot of his time up. But never say never. We've got to do some more, definitely. Yeah, loads of fun. Best fun I've ever had, to be quite honest, out of all of the work that I've done was being on stage, because it's not something that I ever wanted to do. I always wanted to be a writer. I'd been a writer for years and years before I started doing the podcast. Never wanted to be any kind of performer or anything like that. Just drifted, dragged into it, and then finding myself on stage, in front of sellout theatres, on stage with Bob Mortimer was just A, surreal, but B, is just the best fun you can have. It's just so good. So would love to do some more. Yeah.
We're talking about another podcast you're touring with this year is the brilliant Top Flight Time Machine with Sam Delaney. Tell us about the live shows for the uninitiated, because it's a podcast very much about football, but in the loosest sense, I think you'd say.
Again, it started out as being a football podcast. We decided we want to do a thing where we looked at every Premier League season from the beginning, episode by episode, and we got about 15 episodes in and realised that we weren't talking about football quite so much. We'd gone off in tangents, talking about other things, and it's just kind of grown and grown. We've been doing that for like 7 years now. It's grown to now we do 5 episodes a week if you subscribe on the Patreon, the exclusive ones as well. And we do a Monday and a Friday one, which are topical, and we do football predictions, and that's about as football-y as it gets now. We'll talk a bit about football if there's anything of note, but usually it's something else. I mean, we did an episode at the start of this week where Sam had been watching. Do you remember the series 7 Up that was on ITV? And every 7 years they'd go back and revisit this bunch of kids throughout their lives. Sam had started watching that over the weekend online with his son, and he just mentioned that. And we ended up doing the entire episode talking about 7 Up and various things that happened within it. So that's kind of what Top Flight Time Machine is. We can go off and start anywhere and end up anywhere, and we fill half an hour quite easily each time. But we do like themed episodes as well. So for every Thursday we do the Melchester Odyssey, and we're going through issues of Roy the Rovers. We started in the 1981 season. I think we're up to about 1986 now, and we do a different issue each week, following the story of Roy the Rovers, recasting Roy, as this almost arrogant, egotistical, almost mafioso figure running Melchester Rovers with a rod of iron and all the other things that go on with it. So that's been really popular. So we do Melchester on a Thursday. We've started to disappear right up our own arses because we do a thing called the Top Flight Time Machine Odyssey on a Wednesday. And there's one of the listeners put together a spreadsheet where he compiled all of the various offshoot ideas for other podcasts or TV shows or T-shirts or whatever, or things that we'd want to do on the podcast. And he'd come up with this spreadsheet, and it's got about 650 entries on it. So now we've started going through the spreadsheet in episodes. So we're kind of just folding in on ourselves, doing episodes about our episodes. And we seem to be getting away with it, so that's good. And we do a series called History Box, where we'll do a different thing from history. And we do cultural odysseys. We did Kevin Keegan's autobiography, which took us 46 episodes to get through. So we've just started putting them out again as a repeat thing. So yeah, it's a podcast, but there's loads of different strands to it. And we've just got this ability somehow to just be able to sit down and talk and not shut up. And people seem to like it.
I've been through a few of the old Roy Keane odysseys lately. And
Yeah.
fuck me, I'm walking through the street just pissing myself laughing. I didn't have to get quite a few funny looks at both of you struggling with the Irish accent there. But
Oh God, yeah.
really, really good, really good. And I'll try to
thanks.
get down to Sunderland to see us when you're there in April, I think it is, right?
We're there in April, but yeah, we're doing a few shows: London, Leeds, Manchester, Sunderland, and we'll do a few more in the autumn. But the live shows, we did some originally, and we kind of scripted them, and we had kind of costumes and all that kind of thing. And then after we'd done that tour, we realised that was just a load of bollocks. And we'll just sit down on stage and just talk in the same way that we do on an episode. It's a little bit planned, but not really. So if you come to more than one show, you'll get a different show each night. Just keeping it simple. Yeah.
I wanted to know if the Drunken Donkey was your favourite ever Billy Connolly piece of art.
It might be. Where's that come from? Is that from a picture on my wall that I've tweeted?
Yeah, that's a Dunkin' Donkey, yeah, Billy Connolly, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to know if that's your favourite piece of Billy Connolly art, or have you got other pieces you like that are better than that?
It is one of my favourites, yeah. I got 4. I bought a set of 4 a while ago, and that's one of them. And there's another one where there's a outline of a figure with a kind of a string ball on a yo-yo string, and he's standing directly opposite a massive string ball character who's got a little guy on a string, and they're kind of facing each other. I think that might be my favourite, but yeah, Drunken Donkey's a classic.
Another classic piece of McClare research there.
I just saw it and I thought, wow, that was brilliant. You know,
It's great. I mean that photograph that I tweeted, we get people who, what on Time Machine we describe as zoom-in wankers, who would zoom in on a picture and comment on the books that are on your shelf, and all that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things I was trying to do, but I thought, this is just ridiculous. Why am I doing this? You know, I've done it before with other people. You know, just throwing in some
I've done it
bizarre. Yeah. So it gives you great stuff as far as I'm concerned. You know, just pull a book out. You know, so the question that popped out of your books that I could see, because I didn't actually take loads of pictures and then blow up as much as I could, you know, because of other things I was looking at, right? But the question popped in my head while I was looking at it: Johnny Walker or John Peel?
John Peel all the way. Yeah, I started listening to John Peel when I was about 14. You know, as you do, and he just informed so much of the music that I got into, kind of from that era onwards. Yeah, definitely. Johnny Walker wasn't really around that much when I was a teenager. I think he used to do like a Saturday afternoon rock show. Yeah, he went to America, didn't he? Yeah, and then came back. But John Peel.
And just related to that, did you have a poster of Claire Grogan on your wall when you were growing up?
Never had a poster of Claire Grogan. It was all internalized.
You just used to dream about her, yeah?
Yeah, just in my mind. It was all internalized with Claire Grogan. She played, Altered Images played at Pop Rex in Sunderland recently, the venue that I'm sort of closely involved in. And I thought an introduction might have been forthcoming, but it didn't happen.
Oh,
Probably for the best, though. You know what I mean?
you don't want to meet your
Well, you couldn't.
idols.
You were too scared to meet Gary Rowell, so imagine what you'd feel like trying to shaking hands with Claire Grogan.
Exactly. Same kind of level of celebrity and adoration circa 1981-82. Yeah, definitely.
Life with Brian.
Do you want a quiz then? Well, you're getting one anyway. And in honor of Andy's podcast, we've called this one Mince or Ince. And here's why. On Athletico Mince, they've got the British Managers Club skit. Men on the never-ending merry-go-round of tries, fails and bumper severance packages, featuring the likes of David Moyes, Sam Allardyce and Tony Pulis, as well as a few of Chucky's old teammates such as Mark Hughes and Steve Bruce. What you both have to do is tell us whether Tom Ince, son of another one of Brian's old colleagues, has played under any of the British Managers Club members during his meandering career to date. We'll give you 5 alternate goes, like a penalty shootout, and simply answer Mince if neither player nor manager have crossed paths, or Ince if Tom has played for one of these serial sack-ees. Do you both understand?
I do. This is good. I like this.
All right. Andy,
Where
you're our
did you
guest.
get? Is this a Chicago quiz? No. What day was it you were spending too much time on your own?
I'd say Saudi Arabia at this one.
No, honestly, this is not one of those jet lag induced delirium dreams that I have when I usually have these podcasts, but these quizzes. So Andy, you're the guest, so you get the advantage of going first to put the pressure on Brian. And your first one is Roy Hodgson.
I think Crystal Palace jumps out at me there, so I'm going to go Ince.
Wow, good start. It is Ince. But it wasn't Crystal Palace. Tom was a member of the Liverpool side during the 2010-11 season, a campaign fucking laughably called The Bad Times by Liverpool fans, although he failed to make any appearances. So, yeah, you go one up.
Steady on, Mark. Brian, you get underway with your old pal, Steve Bruce.
Ince.
It is Ince, true. They hooked up at Hull City for 2014-15. Of course, there's a link between Tom, Dad, Paul, and Steve, though, at Man United. Do all your kids sort of that generation all know each other? Because they're all at the same age and they've all been kicking around the sometimes the lower reaches of football.
All the kids are. They've only when they were younger, really, and they were in the creche playing together. You know. So I don't think mine are keeping contact with any of theirs, but I'm sure that Schmeichel and Ince and all these other ones involved in will still keep in contact. Aye.
All right, that's 1-1. So, Andy, you're next up. And we've got my favourite manager, Sean fucking Dyche.
I'll say Mince.
Smashed it straight into the corner. It is false. It is a Mince. And luckily for Tom, he's never had the opportunity to waste his creativity under the Ginger Mourinho. So that's you 2-1 up, Andy. And back over to you, Matthew.
There's a huge lot of Everton anger coming out in this.
It's not Everton anger.
This is a cathartic experience. Come on.
It's not Everton.
I need it.
It's Sean Dyche anger, isn't it?
Well, you might have alluded to this one in the last question, Brian. Your second one is Ian Holloway.
Ince.
Yes, it's true. Ince Jr. was a member of Holloway's Blackpool squad in 2011, the year after their one and only trip to the Premier League.
Oh, 2-2. I don't think we've ever got this far into the quiz with a 100% record for both players. So, Andy, see if you can screw this up with Big Sam Allardyce and his pints of wine.
Mince.
It is Mince.
You're
there we go,
good.
3-2.
I think you actually know the answers to these, not just guessing.
We didn't brief him on this beforehand. I was quite surprised that these two had never crossed paths, the amount of clubs they both had. So, yeah, that's 3-2 to Andy.
Okay, 100% record, so Brian can only really screw this up. Your third one is quite topical. It's Davy Moyes.
Mince.
Well, yeah, 3 out of 3 for both of you. False. No connection between those two. But now's the time, Chocky. You work with the Moisey at United, didn't you? So maybe this is an opportunity to offer Mark some encouraging words about the new Everton manager.
Well, remember, I've had 11 and a half years of him.
He's all right. Brian experience of that, I only had like 10 months of him, yeah. So I heard a very close colleague of his, while I was doing some continued professional development, saying that he was a wonderful and an excellent defensive coach, which is something that Everton do not need. They need a wonderful attacking coach.
Well, he might break that Southampton record of 53 passes before every shot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's 3s each, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, this is a record. Andy, your penultimate pen is Tony Pulis.
Tony Pulis. I'm going off vibes here completely. I'm gonna say Ince.
Keeps the record going. Yeah, it's 4-3. It is Ince. It feels to me like Pulis and Ince should have worked together with at least 4 clubs, but no. They've just had the one season together at Crystal Palace in 2013-14.
Okay, you've got 2 left, Brian, and your 4th down. Your 4th one is Steve McLaren.
Mince.
And he's missed.
Oh, the pressure's got to him.
Yep. Steve and his dodgy Dutch accent took Tom on loan at Derby County in 2015. How could anyone forget?
Yeah. All right, Andy, this is your opportunity to seal the victory with your final penalty, and it is Nigel Pearson.
Nigel Pearson. Ince.
Yay! I think that is our first person who's got all 5 right before.
We've got somebody. We had Emmett Scanlon got all 5 wrong, didn't we? So you joined.
He did. Yeah, that was quite some feat. Yeah, but no, Andy's done the reverse.
Oh man!
Hall of Fame rather than Hall of Shame. Yeah. Those two worked together at Derby too. Ince claimed that Pearson lost the dressing room very quickly. There's a surprise with his lack of understanding how to get the best from the players. This probably contributed to him getting the sack after just 14 games. Should we do the last one anyway?
Yeah, well, seeing as you probably spent about an hour in some first class lounge.
No, I'm refusing to take it.
Oh, no. Oh, well, come on, Brian. You
just have to read it out and read out the answer.
Well, we can put it to the floor. Brian, the final one is old strike partner of Brian so many years and former teammate of Tom's dad, Mark Hughes.
Mince.
Oh, you knew that one. Oh, that was a good guess. They missed out. They missed out on each other at Stoke City as Tom left just before Sparky arrived. So unlucky. Close, but
5-4. That's got to be the biggest.
I think that's the best score we've ever had. Yeah.
One wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to finish off, Andy, to get a little better before we let you go, we're putting you through the quickfire Focus On feature, an homage to the Shoot and Match magazine player interviews back in the day. Some of these were put before Chocky by Shoot and Match when he was banging in the goals for Celtic and Man United. So, Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Full name?
Andrew Dawson.
Birthplace and date?
Sunderland, 12th of July, 1972.
Most memorable match?
It'll be the Sunderland versus Chelsea, 2000.
Favourite sports person?
Favourite sports person? Ooh. I'll say, darts player Dave Chisnell.
If you were forced to seek a new job tomorrow, what would it be?
Darts player.
Where are you going tonight?
Bed.
If you could come back in another life as an animal, what would it be and why?
Come back as another animal. I'd like to be a bird. Because of the freedom. A big bird, a predator. I'll say a kestrel.
just for reference, Brian's in his interview said he'd like to be a cat because they always seem to get left loads of money by rich old ladies in their wills.
Oh yes.
Who are your favourite pop stars?
Pet Shop Boys.
Favourite food?
Chocolate.
And finally, who would you least like to share a jacuzzi with?
Donald Trump.
Oh, I knew it was going to be a politician. I knew it was going to be
the water would look like tomato soup
Could you
by the finish.
imagine
Wouldn't
it?
Oh.
Jesus Christ!
Minestrone soup.
I thought you'd go for Boris Johnson myself. I had him in my head,
Oh.
you know. So
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, that's your lot, folks.
Well, hang on a minute. Before you wrap
oh.
up, Matt, I just wanted to ask some of these. You asked Brian. These questions were obviously asked to Brian. I wanted to know what the one where it said, "Where are you going out tonight?" Do you remember that, Brian? Because I don't.
No.
Or where are you going tonight? Rather?
No.
I'm intrigued to know that you don't know the answer.
I don't recall that as a
think-
question, but
No, it was probably one of Chucky's many lies in these things because he said he was going to the opera.
oh yeah, that's like me. Yeah, that's exactly what I would have been saying. Yeah, I think
So
there
it's-
used to be a pub called the Opera. I think that's.
Yeah, all right, well, that makes more sense. That definitely makes more sense. All right, let's wrap it up there then. So there's just enough time to say goodbye, and thanks to Andy for coming on. Andy, what's next for Mince and Top Flight Time Machine, and where can our listeners get it into their ears at the earliest opportunity?
We're just plodding along, just doing our thing. Mince, we're doing about one episode a month now. More if we can, but you can get a listen on all good, reliable podcast apps. Apple, Spotify, all of them. Top Flight Time Machine, we do, as I said, 5 episodes a week. Again, all good podcast apps. And yeah, we're just plodding along, doing our thing.
Brilliant. Been a pleasure having you on, Andy.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of
Cheers,
fun.
Andy.
Thanks,
so much for
Andy.
joining
That
us.
was brilliant. So
Brian, Matthew, thanks to you both. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, great to be back, and here's to 2025, eh?
Yeah, indeed. And to you out there, thanks for coming. Subscribe wherever you usually get your podcasts. And please follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Brian McClare Pod. And we'll see you again next time. Cheers.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Talking politics and football. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Life with Brian.